Hi, I'm Amy Wilkins, leadership coach, former media exec, and your host of Thriving in the Messy Middle. This is a space for women leaders navigating those in between seasons, the moments when things feel uncertain, stretched, or messy, and you're trying to find your footing without losing yourself. Some episodes are conversations with remarkable women leaders sharing the lessons they've learned along the way. And other times, it's just you and me, slowing things down and naming what's really going on. Think of this as a place to reset, reflect, and reconnect with what matters most. Because thriving isn't about having it all figured out. It's about learning how to grow, lead, and move forward, even when things feel messy. I am thrilled to have Laura Nespoli here on the show today. So Laura is a strategic storytelling advisor whose clients have included Google, Salesforce, JP Morgan, as well as founders and women professionals building the next chapter of their careers. She's the founder of Mesh and Movement and creator of the Story for Growth app. And she believes story isn't just a business tool. It's how we make meaning, drive change, and find ourselves. Well, that belief gets deeply personal in her debut book, Threads of Me and You, a memoir paired with strategic frameworks to help you own your story from the inside out. Laura, welcome. It is great to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
So I should just tell folks like how I even met you, which is on LinkedIn. Yeah, following what you've been doing, which I just so admire and respect. I'm thrilled that we're going to get to share more of what you're about with folks. I loved your book, and in that you do talk about a pretty pivotal, and I'm going to call it messy time in your life. What I'd love to do before we even go there is to sort of maybe take it back a little, right? Because one of the things I always love to stress with folks is messy doesn't happen once, right? It happens more than once, and they look different. And so because they look different, we sometimes don't even recognize that, oh, this is messy, right? But it's different than what it was before. So do you have something that you can share, an example from earlier in your career that felt messy and what came out of that?
There are so many examples, and even that word is what brought me and drew me to your work, Amy, and made me realize just how much synergy and connection there was in what we talk about. Messy is ongoing. I think earlier on in my career, I think I'm in my second stage of my career right now. And this transformational story that I went through feels like the turn of the page for me and really was the most pivotal and messiest time. And so I'd have to say it really was when Mesh and Movement started, and 2 years into Mesh and Movement is when all of the unraveling fully took place, both in my personal life, more so in my personal life. And so coming out of that, immediately after that, I took over full ownership of Mesh, and I had started the company with a business partner. And it was the messiest time for me to figure out what it looked like to step forward by myself when I didn't have someone to validate the moves, when I didn't have explicit permission on what to do, which was something I really always operated on, and defining in the midst of complete chaos was really messy work. And at the same time, I was deep in the midst of a personal emotional breakdown. So that's about as messy as it gets.
Yeah, there was a lot happening all at once. And it was interesting to hear you had the courage to go out on your own and create something. But at the same time, there was that somebody else was in your corner encouraging that move that maybe wouldn't have happened without that.
It was only after I had gotten to that full unraveling point that I needed to do the work of really building myself back with intention. So until that point, I didn't have a definition of my own self-worth. Truly, I knew I needed it, but it took a long time for it to actually take root in a way inside my system that I could actually act on it. And thank goodness for the partner I had at the time because he believed in me. And I borrowed on that belief to start taking steps for myself that I'm not sure I could have done without in my corner.
Yeah. And what did it tell you about yourself when you realized, oh, wow, I needed his validation before I was going to make a move? What did you learn about yourself?
It took a long time of just spinning in a stasis sort of state as we were contemplating what to do with the company for me to realize I have to be able to do this for myself or I'm never going to get anywhere. I think in my book, I talked about it. It was like I was in a snow globe and I was inside this little shell and I knew all the things and I knew I needed to take action, but there was just this hard exterior blocking me from actually releasing it all to the world. So I knew ultimately the biggest realization in all of it was I am accountable for the life that I want and I can't rely on anybody else. Of course, you want to be able to trust people and you want to be able to lean on people and we're there for each other. If you're lucky, you have people in your corner, but ultimately you have to take the steps that you want for yourself and you can't wait for anybody else to do it for you.
Having read your book, I'm sort of feeling like I don't want to assume people know what I know about your story. And that, share a little bit about what that thread, that, that is such a powerful visual. I'd love you to just share more about where that came from.
Yeah. So I'm a strategist in my daily work. I call myself a strategic storyteller because I have done strategy across the sales marketing spectrum. And I was always the person that put the deck together, that put the slides together, that told the story to clients and made it meaningful for them, whether I was working at a research company, when I worked in media, to then building my career in creative strategy, brand strategy, and purpose work. And I always say I follow the thread guide as I move through information. I'm driven by curiosity and I look for the through lines and the interesting tensions or connections between disparate points of information. So the thread has always been something that I talk about, following the thread. It's so fascinating when I think about my personal journey. And once I, years later, was able to articulate it in the form of a book, when I think back on starting to feel that sense of wondering, it was almost like a sense of longing. And I liken it to having a rope tied around my waist and pulling me somewhere. And I had no idea where I was getting pulled to, but it felt like there was something attached to me and I was getting pulled. So that thread became something that I followed in my personal transformation journey as well.
Yeah, so much of what you just shared is what came through in one of the archetypes that I uncovered in my work, which is the dreamer, right? That has put something maybe on a shelf they've been holding back from going for, but at a certain point in time, the tipping point is when they can't ignore it anymore. And it doesn't mean you know exactly what it is, right? It can be like really foggy, but there's just that pull to there is something more. And if I don't go for it, I can't even keep doing what I'm doing.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
It becomes that. You talk a lot about story. And so I really would love you to talk a little bit about how you see that for people like me, right? The role that story can play, and all of our listeners, like what role that can play for them, and any of the other work that you're creating that supports that.
Yeah. Having been a strategist and storyteller on the business side of things for so long, it was only around that point in my career, when I was at that climactic point in my personal transformation journey, that I started doing more and more work in purpose storytelling for founders. So understanding the context for the work that they were doing and the kind of building momentum up towards the purpose of their work, and then the following action of like, how do they achieve that purpose? So using a story arc to bring people into a brand, bring people into even a product, the story arc is so important because it frames marketing, products, innovations around real human experience. But only after I went through my transformation journey, and because I had spent my whole life really containing my own story, I never felt like I was a protagonist in my own life. I lived in service to other people. I never thought of myself as the main character. Everything I was doing was in service to others. I even had CEOs in the past ask me, what do you see yourself doing? And I said, I always want to be a number two. I just had this service mindset. I don't matter. What can I do in service to you, and how can I support you? And so I went through this transformation journey, and because I had contained my story, my personal story, for so long, it was as if it was spilling out of me. I couldn't help but share what I was going through at the time. And for my 40th birthday, shared a birthday fundraising site for Girls on the Run of Greater Rochester to benefit the organization, because they were such a big part of giving me the tools to know that I had enough value and worth to actually own my story. And I shared my coming out story on this fundraising website. And after that, my husband's company, the head of HR, she asked if I would speak at their company. She said it was so inspiring. She just wanted people to hear what I was doing. That pushed me into really digging into, how can I make this work meaningful for other people? What is it about what I just shared that seems to be resonating with people so much? And so I put my strategist hat on and dug into, what is it about storytelling and the structure of a story, the format of a story, and what it does to our brains that impacts people in such a profound way. And that's where I found the same things that I do in my work for business storytelling, helping brands and products connect meaningfully with audiences. The science is consistent no matter what. And so as we think about your original question, how can we use this for ourselves? Our lives are ruled by narratives. All day long, there's a story running in your head. You've got context and challenges that you're facing, and you envision yourself as a moving character or entity through that situation. We invent narratives, outcomes, things that we're imagining. A lot of times these are limiting beliefs. We have narratives that are running through our minds that we're inventing, and they're there to protect us. It's those caveman days instinct of making sure that we're looking for threat, assessing our landscape, what could be dangerous for us out there, and making sure that we respond in a way that's going to keep us safe. And so our brain is telling us a narrative of threat and hold back and stay in place and stay safe all the time. And it is truly, it's your mind, and you have the ability to manage your mind. And so the storytelling and mindfulness piece go hand in hand. But a lot of the work that I do now and how I translate this experience, the reason I felt so compelled to write a book, even though it's a painful process, it's hard to put yourself out there in this way. It's because I knew that so many other women are in the same boat, not just women, men too, of what narrative are we living in, and how do you examine that narrative? How can I use the structure and frameworks, exercises that I'm accustomed to from a strategist perspective to give someone the tools to actually pull those details from their mind, put it down, process it, understand it, and reshape them for different outcomes? How do you change your most painful experience of your past? How do you use that? And what prompts, what questions, what frameworks can help you rewrite that into a resilience narrative? How can you look at your barrier story and how do you make it an outcome story? All sorts of just basic prompts and structures that help you flip the script in your mind.
Yeah, it's like a powerful reframe, right?
Yeah.
Like taking anything that has happened. It's like what I love to talk about is when things are messy, we think that's a really bad thing, and it can feel bad at the time. But when we move to the other side and we move through it, there's something that we gained. And most of the time, it is a lot of what you talk about, right? It's like you reclaim yourself, right? You have a way better understanding of what makes you tick, and maybe and the things that were holding you back, and you get to bring that wisdom forward so that the next time it's messy, it's going to be a different messy because you've learned that one, right? Like you've learned that. So what would you say to somebody who is just starting to pick on that thread, but they're not quite ready to give it a tug?
I wasn't ready either. And I have this word I talk about, wanderlust, into the wanderlust, and choose awe, your platform. It's the same idea. And it truly is like, how can you look at this messy situation, this hard thing, and look at it with a sense of wonder and curiosity? And it has to be, I say wanderlust because it has to be a curiosity that is so strong. You are willing to look at things you might not want to see. You have to explore all of it. And none of it needs to be definitive. You can just go with an explorer mindset and just see what you uncover. You don't have to act on it,
Right.
but you can just discover. So I would say if someone feels like they've got that little thread and they're afraid to give it a tug, just get curious about it. Just start asking questions, and internal questions only if that's what it needs to be. But sit with it and give yourself space to think about it in that way.
Yeah, I really took that away when I read your book. You can start small with that curiosity. You don't have to yank on that thread. You can just pull on it gently and just see what begins to uncover before you maybe kind of go all the way, which can take a while. It can take a minute because of what you were just talking about. We put on armor to protect ourselves, and it gets heavy, so heavy, and takes a long time to be able to just say, I don't need this.
Yeah.
It's actually in the way of me having my full self-expression. And so for as long as I keep it on, I can't go there. I can't go where I want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even say, once you learn a lesson, I think it comes back again and again. The wisdom that you get from that one experience, I'm sorry, you're going to have to pull it out another time.
It's
You're
true.
going to have to try again.
Yeah.
And I think of life as a spiral, and it might be tightly packed at the center of that spiral, and that's where we begin. And as we move through life, the spiral slowly unwinds and it gets wider and wider. If you move from the center of that spiral towards the outer edges, you might get tripped over that line less frequently. You might have a faster get up and recover time, but that lesson is going to come back to you again and again.
Yeah.
It's not so black and white.
Think about it. These things are baked in. They've been baked in for so long that it takes a while for us to recognize that's the same pattern, right? Or I might be back into something. I do think that there is a benefit if we're willing to remind ourselves when we've made it through something. Oh, like I can do hard things, right?
Yeah.
Like having done it before, I can do it again. And even that alone is an important lesson to carry forward. And we sometimes forget to use that lesson too, which is, again, why it's a reminder, right? Consistently reminding. Yeah.
I always think when I'm feeling uncomfortable and I know that something is bothering me and stressing me and it could spiral, I always in those moments say, this is a gift. And just immediately calling the hardest things I'm going through a gift, it forces me to use that narrative structure. It forces me to use the reframe almost immediately. And it makes it easier to push through the difficulty because I'm telling myself, I know I'm going to get something out of this. I might not be clear on what it is at this time, but something good will come of this.
I wonder what you would say to the folks who feel like they need to know where it's leading, right? Because I do think that's what often holds us back. It's like if we can't see the path really clearly, we're like, it creates inertia, right? So what would you say to the person that's sort of just resisting that and feeling like, I really need to know?
I see you because I was there. I'm a strategist. I like, as much as I am a highly creative person and I've got so much right brain driving me, I'm also highly analytical. And I totally understand. I was looking for answers for 2 years. I wanted clarity. I wanted to know, and I just couldn't know. Sometimes it takes time.
Yeah.
And I think one of the greatest gifts I got in this entire process was I was ready to walk away from my relationship, my marriage, because I just didn't think it could change. I was feeling the need for change. It wasn't happening. And I needed to know what was going to happen. I needed something conclusive. I needed outcomes. And a friend of mine said, you have to give it everything you have so that when you walk away, you will know that you gave it everything that you had. And that took a long time. It took 2 years for my husband and I to finally be able to connect with one another because we were in very different places. And if I hadn't given it that space, I don't know where we would be. And sometimes you can't know, and it sucks. It just sucks. Yeah. You want to know, and I get it, but sometimes the answers take a long time.
They do. Yeah. And when I was reading about your journey, one of the things that really got amplified for me is how sometimes when one thing starts to unravel or reveal itself, it can start to impact other areas of our life. And that's you can't know what that's going to look like until you're actually in it. But it seemed like that really was what was happening for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting because I left my job at the time and started Mesh and Movement because I felt like I needed more purpose in my life. I love the work I do. I still do the same work I was doing back then, but now I do it with more purpose in it. But I didn't realize that I needed more purpose, and I needed a clear definition of my purpose. And I think that's what's so beautiful about helping people articulate their purpose. They might think it's for their work, but it's not. It's getting to something that is an intrinsic driver and part of who they are. And I know you talk about this, Amy, with living in alignment. And once you're clear on what you're meant to do, that alignment, it doesn't contain itself to one aspect of who you are. It's everything. And everything needs to kind of like stack into place with that alignment.
Tell us about some of the new things that you are bringing out at this time. I know you have the book and it just came out, but I know there's all these other things that you're working on.
Yeah, there are. I developed an app this year. So the app itself is called Story for Growth. I have a program in there called Own Your Story. So it's all the go-to-market storytelling work that I do for helping organizations and women articulate their purpose story, for nonprofits, helping them articulate their impact narrative. How do people just articulate what it is they do and why it matters in the world? And I shaped that with integrating personal narrative work into it, because I think one of the biggest challenges we have in marketing ourselves is the personal narrative that's holding us back. So a lot of the work that I've done in my book and in the workbook that's included in the book, I integrate into this Own Your Story process so that you're not just getting clarity on your market definition, but you're getting confidence to truly stand behind it and feel like you own your story and feel confident sharing it. And so that's an app-based program that's also part of I include 6 weeks of coaching. So deep story immersion session and then one-to-one coaching. And then to launch the book, I also launched the book with a collective art exhibit.
Tell us about it.
Threads of Me was the initial title of the book. And when I started sharing my story more and more, I realized that these are not just threads of me. These experiences and all the themes that we've just talked about, this is really universal to our human experience of growth and who we are as we move through life. So it naturally had to be threads of me and you. And it only felt appropriate to launch this book with in other women's experiences, other people's experiences with the same themes. So I envisioned an art show where many female, specifically women and LGBTQ plus artists would be bringing to life the themes of unraveling limits and weaving growth and the transformation journey, the unraveling, the messy middle part of it. And I saw not just the pieces of artists represented here, but also the connection, the threads weaving them together, and my own aspect of narrative connecting all of the pieces. So I launched that this month in June with an exhibit in Rochester, New York at the Yards Collective. It's a beautiful space, and the show has just been so powerful and so moving, and it follows the same three parts of the book, from following loose threads to the unraveling and then the reweaving process. There's an interactive component of it where I invite attendees to leave what they're letting go of and what they're reweaving into their lives. And that's been so beautiful to see. It's like a big board, lots of hooks, people just filling in the blank I'm letting go of. And it's incredible to see what connects us as humans as the board is filling in.
Laura, are there other things that you want to leave our listeners with as it relates to finding their story?
Yeah, there's one thing that I wanted to underline in creating this book for people. And it's one thing that keeps coming back to me as I'm getting reviews and people reading it, which so far have been amazing. It's that you don't have to tear down your life. You don't have to tear it all apart to get the life that you want. Yeah. And I think that the word transformation sounds really big and really scary. But I talk about weaving growth from within because there is so much change that you can bring into your life just by changing your position, your internal story in the way that you see the world. And so that's the biggest underline. This is not about needing to get up and tear your family apart, leave your job necessarily, move to Bali or do it. It doesn't have to be that kind of transformation. You can actually, I feel like I'm living an entirely different life, but I'm in the exact same life I was always in.
Yeah. Isn't that wild? It's almost like I just put on different glasses and I have a different lens to see it in a way that is completely different. That's a beautiful way to close, and reminding people that if you're in something messy right now, you can start to just get really curious about that thread and begin to follow it. And you'll have that opportunity to take a look inside and weave something new that will inspire you. We will share links so that people can find your work in the show notes so that people will know everything that you are up to, Laura. And I just want to thank you for being with me today.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you for the chance to talk, and thank you for giving space for my story. It really means a lot to me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope something you heard gave you a little clarity, or maybe just a sense that you're not alone in this season. The messy middle isn't something we pass through once. It shows up again and again, and each time we meet it with a bit more awareness, a bit more choice, and a lot more self-trust. If this episode resonated, follow the show so you don't miss what's next. And if someone came to mind while listening, share it with them. That's how this community grows. You'll find links and resources in the show notes and more ways that we can work together at chooseaw.com. And I'll leave you with this reminder. You are the most worthwhile project you will ever work on. So until next time, keep thriving, even in the messy middle.